Hello everyone. Welcome to a bit of a special mental health video. Obviously, some of you may have watched our mental health minis before, but as it's World Mental Health Day, I wanted to kind of do something a bit special, grab some of the people that we've done videos with, and kind of go into a bit more depth than we necessarily didn't get to in the videos. So as I won't waffle on. So as you will have heard in the videos, my name's David Whiteside. I'm a suicide survivor, and therefore I'm very keen that other people don't feel the way I did, which is why I do the sort of thing to kind of try and help others who may either be struggling or may know someone who's struggling, to kind of give them advice, give them help, let them know they're not alone. So with that being said, I'm not the one you're here to listen to, so we'll crack on. We'll do a bit of introduction. So Simon, you're in my top left, so most people might know who you are, but do you want to give us a one line of who you actually are?
Yeah, never assume everyone knows who you are. So my name is Simon. I am a broadcaster from many years ago, Blue Peter, through to Sky Sports, a little bit of time away, and now Soccer Saturday.
Cool. Nick, you're next in line, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so I definitely won't take up a lots of space. I'm just here as part of the mental health team supporting you, David. Thank you very much for organising this. So my name's Nick, and in my day job, I work as assistant head in a Norfolk school, and as part of that role, I'm a mental health champion and the Senko, which means I work with young people who are having challenges around mental health as well as other things.
And as we're going clockwise on my screen, Tommy, you're next.
Hi there, guys. My name is TeacherTommyT. I am a full-time special education needs teacher. But I have a slight little hobby and side hustle doing TikToks, YouTube, and Instagram, and got a few people following now and again. But yeah, and I dislike teacher sketches and comedy sketches for students.
Cool. And last and certainly not least, for Chris, you seem to have your face everywhere these days on Scrimmage, but a little bit about yourself.
Everyone's fed up of seeing me, David. You've chucked me in the deep end there. My name is Chris Reeve, and I talk nonsense about Norwich on both Talk Norwich City, which is the #1 Norwich City fan channel, and I also co-host The Scrimmage on BBC Radio Norfolk, and more recently Canary Call on BBC Radio Norfolk.
Excellent. And once again, I've said this before we started, but thank you guys for doing this. Obviously, it's an important subject to me and many others. It's also quite a difficult subject to talk about. The more open we are, the more people will talk, but also it's quite a personal subject sometimes. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, and I did this in the original sort of mental health minis, is your kind of experiences with mental health and mental well-being, coming at it from different angles. Either you've dealt with it yourself, that can be, obviously we've all experienced grief in some way, a lot of you have been quite open about that, stress and things, but also you've seen other people go through it. I know Nick and Tommy, particularly as teachers, you'll have seen students go through it as well. So I'm going to jump on you, Tommy, I'm afraid, and start with you. What are your experiences with mental health and mental well-being?
Yeah, so my experience really is obviously school's obviously started back up now, but that first initial couple of weeks going back into school is quite a hit of so many different emotions and feelings. And obviously for some teachers, yes, they get that typical you've got all that time off in the summer feeling, and then suddenly you're bombarded by so much stuff. And for me in an SEN role, it's trying to make sure that all the students have got everything they need, like set up through their EHCPs or educational healthcare plans. So you've got to support the students, the parents, and your own team. And you're really trying to make sure the students are happy and supported from the start, and there are days you don't get it right, and the past few weeks sometimes we don't get it right, and sometimes we do, but it takes a lot of stress and strain out of a lot of teaching staff, and yeah, it can be quite overwhelming. And from a student perspective, it's very similar. That first day of coming back into school or a college or a high school setting after having so much time off, that anxiety, the leap for year sixes transitioning to high school to year 7 is massive. So especially in Norfolk, we have so many young children going from small village schools then into high schools, and they're like twice the size, and it's a culture shock as well of the language suddenly changes, and they're made to grow up quite quickly from when they were in year 6, and so you're dealing with their mental health issues that come through the door as well. And it's quite hard to sometimes distance yourself from some of the stories that they're telling, because it can hit a nerve a little bit. So you have to be very professional not to show your cards too soon about how you might feel, because everyone, as you said in here, has got their own issues that have happened in their life. Everyone has some mental health, but yeah, so there's quite a few pressures there, but I'm sure there's ones I've missed, so I've got my fellow teacher here to help me out with this.
It's interesting you to talk about, and I'm going to now drop Chris in it because I'm going to make sure at least everyone has a start of this. You talk about making sure that you kind of don't hit a nerve, or no, sorry, reword that. That it's really hard when you hear a student say something and it kind of hits with you. Chris, obviously, you're very prevalent on social media and things like that. It must be difficult when you get guys call in and or you see stuff on social media that you you must see things that again hit you and kind of make you struggle. How do you deal with that?
There's no real sort of blueprint, one size fits all approach to this, right? It's really, really complicated. There's a lot of grey space in this sort of black and white world that we're in, and but I think what's helped me is understanding and learning about self psychology and understanding about the thinking cycle and your thoughts that equal your behaviors, that equal your actions, that then equal your outcomes, and that cycle goes round and round and round. And so yeah, when I see something online, it saddens me because that's the world we live in today, but at the same time, as long as you are assured within yourself about who you are, the type of person you are, how you help people, what you do, and as long as you're putting good into the world, then I just try and pour a lot of empathy onto the situation, David. I think well, I don't think we know that, and we're obviously on this talking about mental health, and that's the filter that I apply to almost all of the online stuff that either I receive or someone else receives, is that someone has to be in a whole spot of bother with their mental well-being to want to spend their precious time on this planet abusing others on social media. And to link in with the topic of kids, I think it's an incredibly concerning time that we live in. I think that the teachers are doing everything they can to help educate kids on online safety and social media and the impacts of that and the implications of that on their mental health and the mental health of their fellow students. But also the thing that always interests me is clearly those kids that are going through mental health challenges themselves for whatever reason. It's often that gang that end up doing the anonymous social media abuse. So I mean that's just a couple of things for me, but there are a million ways that you can try your best to combat it. My day job is social media marketing, so I'm always trying to think about ways in which to update what's coming into my digital presence, if that makes sense. So like unfollowing people, disconnecting with people, muting certain words. So it's quite remarkable really, because the majority of my X account now is like just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably actually getting to the thousands of people that are just muted. So yeah.
Well played.
And sometimes that's the best way to deal with it.
And you know what, David, sorry to go again here. And I had a chat to Simon about this the other day, is times that by 250 million with regards to Sky Sports and Simon's role, and the larger the audience, seemingly the bigger and the more abuse you get. And so it's like I count myself lucky, because Simon in his role, it's like this thankless, helpless exercise of you're just constantly getting bombarded by people all the time. So it's really, really tough. It's really, really tough.
And you segued brilliantly, because my next question was going to be towards Simon and obviously his role. He's very, very public facing on one of the most popular shows on Sky Sports. He's filled some big shoes, but equally, so I want to ask you about that, Simon. But I also want to ask you, and feel free to tell me to go away on this one. How do you feel as a parent and with kids and social media these days?
I have to be careful at this point, David, not to sound really smug, like we've got it all sorted. But I and my wife, Dorina, she's Ethan's stepmom. So we've got two very young kids, like yourself. So social media, that world is a long way off. But Ethan's turning 15 at the end of this month. And we'd always had the conversation that he would get a phone when he went to senior school. So he's now into his third year at senior school. And we were both on the same hymn sheet, myself and Dorina, in terms of what that would look like before he got the phone. And for both of us, we felt that in terms of his mental health, in terms of him getting the best out of life during this period, which is a difficult period. If you can remember your teenage years, it's quite confusing. There's a lot going on in here, as well as all the growth here. And we just felt that's not a world he needs to be part of right now. So when we sat down for the phone discussion about 3 months before he started senior school, it was for us quite simple. It was, my boy, we will get you a phone. You will have, if you want, one of daddy's old smartphones, but you're not going on social media. And that included, until about 3 months ago, WhatsApp. And his face kind of fell and it was like, but all my friends are on it and all that kind of thing. Totally get it. Totally get it. I said, okay, well, the deal is if you're not happy with that, then the alternative is I'll just get you a very bog standard phone, which you can just text and call on. He immediately wanted the smartphone. And so over the last 2 years, yeah, it's been hard for him at times because a lot of his friends communicate via Snapchat chat in terms of actually exchanging messages. But I am absolutely convinced that his world is not a poorer world for not being on it. I really don't. And I've said to him once or twice over the time he's had his phone that I think you will thank us one day for this. I'm reading an extraordinary book at the moment, when I get a moment, called The Anxious Generation by a guy called Jonathan Haidt. He's an American psychologist. Unbelievable book that kind of charts the history of the smartphone and what it's done to young people's mental health, obviously mainly in America. And it's frightening, but it kind of in lots of ways has reinforced our decision and made me think, actually, we've made a really good decision here because there's so much for him to enjoy in this world. Social media can wait till he's a little bit older. There's things to experience, there's sights and sounds to take in, and not spend most of his life doing that. So listen, we haven't got it all sorted. We still have those battles over screen time, which we set. But we just felt it's a world we don't need him being part of. And, picking up on what Chris was saying, I've been on the sharp end of some really unpleasant stuff online. And really, for me, in terms of how I handle that, I'm really, really disciplined in terms of what I choose to look at and when I choose to look at it. And I started this when I was doing the Premier League a few years ago on Sky, because when I went from the Football League to doing the Premier League, the scrutiny went up about tenfold. You know what it's like. If you're looking for stories on the EFL, they're nothing compared to how many stories there'll be on the Premier League on a Monday morning in any of the broadsheets. So the scrutiny was massive. And obviously the comments on social media grew exponentially through that period because you're doing big games and you're covering teams like Liverpool or Man United or Chelsea, whoever it might be, loads of fans worldwide. And I still do the same now, which is Instagram. I still think by and large is a kinder place. X is just feral. It's just full of a lot of pond life. And I've kept the same rule, which is for 24 hours and beyond, when I finish Soccer Saturday at 6 o'clock on a Saturday, or I left a Premier League game back in the day, I look at nothing, because I might have had a really good show where everything has gone pretty much as I wanted. Yes, one or two things could have been better, but I feel good and I feel positive about what we did and how we covered it. I don't need, because I know how I work, I don't need one oik somewhere in the UK telling me that I'm rubbish, that then brings everything down in my head. So I'm quite disciplined about just keeping some distance from it and only looking at it when I actually need to look at it.
And you guarantee that comment will be something like, well, Simon, Manchester United lost and that's your fault, which,
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing Stephen Fry, sorry, just to bang on slightly, but I remember seeing Stephen Fry on I think the Graham Norton show a few years ago, and Stephen Fry, keeping the kind of Norwich theme going, has quite a love-hate relationship with Twitter, and he was one of the original Twitterati, huge amounts of followers quite quickly. But sometimes he disappears for a while. And Graham Norton was asking, why is it you sometimes come off it? And he was talking about those barbed comments. And sometimes, because obviously he's someone who's struggled with his mental health a lot down the years, he just takes himself out of it and just kind of suspends his account. And he asked why he did this. Why did that one comment? You get so much praise. People love you. They think you're, a national institution. Why does those one comment affect you so much? And he said, it's a little bit like this. And it's the same for all of us. In the way when we see that one nasty comment compared to 99 really good ones. He said it's like being sat by a beautiful swimming pool, and it's lovely and it's inviting, you just want to get in, and then someone does a poo right in the far corner. The rest of the pool is absolutely fine, but that one little thing in the corner, you're not going to want to get in. And he said that's the way it works for him, and it does work like that for me. One person can ruin my day, so don't look at it when you don't need to.
And I think that's as graphic as that analogy is. I think it's a brilliant one, because it is like, if you see a wonderful swimming pool, if someone does something at the other end, you're not getting in that swimming pool, no matter how perfect the rest of it is.
No.
On the subject of social media, Tommy, I'm going to bring you back into this, because obviously we won't go through your numbers because it's crass and vulgar, they say, but they're not a small amount of followers that you have across social media. But I was watching one of your lives earlier, as you well know. I was mentioned on it, but one of the things I like about your lives is you have moderators that kind of try and stop some of the comments that might be a bit more on the raw side. Let's put it like that. But sometimes they sneak through. I mean, if you see those during one of your lives or something, how do you cope with that? Because obviously you're very public on social media. You spend a lot of time on it. You have, when we spoke about it previously for Children's Mental Health Week, you said social media can be an absolute force for good, but it can also be this absolute pit of horror. So when you see these things, not just for yourself, but for like the kids that are watching you, how do you see that?
For me, it's really tough, to be fair, because I feel like with some of us probably here, I don't want to speak for most people, but I feel like we're all at a certain age where we can take kind of like a bit of abuse now and again. You can be like, okay, I can handle it. I'm 30, I'm 36 now. I'd be like, I've heard it worse. I've been a Norwich fan for years. I went to Bungay High in Suffolk. It was tough. So in those years, but when I see things on live, I think I'm with what Simon said. It and the Stephen Fry analogy. Occasionally, it can like really get to me, and I focus on it. But then for me, I'm like, okay, but there is. I think someone else said. I think Chris said it's just someone back at home who's probably got their own issue as well. But I can take it quite. For me, everyone's different, so I can take it quite a lot. And I do get picked on for my eyes, my teeth, my accent, whatever. It doesn't affect me, but what does affect me when they attack my followers or other people in the chat, or if it's my family, because I can't protect other people, and I've got a bit of an issue about that. I can't help other people as much as I can help myself. So I do worry about that. So my moderators, to be a moderator with me is really not an easy. I don't just click, you're a moderator. They're parents, they're teachers, they're people I know, and they're people who look out for people really carefully. So then I feel like I'm doing the best job I possibly can. And I get young people come on there all the time saying, I'm feeling like this. My mental health is not good at the moment. I'm feeling suicidal. I've got a lot of anxiety. I'm worried about doing my GCSEs, or I'm being bullied. And I'm just like, we're all trying to filter that as best we can. And my main thing is put the phone down right now and go and talk to your family. Like, it's amazing that you are brave enough to put on social media in front of people right now and writing this, your name, and that you're going through this. If you can do that, then put the phone down. You don't need that now. And go and speak to your family, like go and speak to your grandparents or your auntie, your uncle, or your best friend, because the conversation is going to be better than this. And when you Google all the things that they want to then go Google, it doesn't help either. So I'm just constantly trying to make sure they're safe. And sometimes you think, oh, they just said a school name, so I have to safeguard it. So I'm like back to work. So it's a really hard balance. But yeah, I feel for myself, it doesn't affect me. I think it's just, I don't know why it doesn't affect me. I'm just used to it. I suppose I could grow up a little bit of that kind of mentality, I suppose. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel worried that I can't always protect everyone online. I can't do that. And in the chat, it's very difficult. And but we're getting much more and more better at it, as much as we can. But the advice I always say is go and talk to your family members, like fake news is another thing we talked about before, right? So I always say, like, watch the BBC with your family. Don't go on these websites. Don't go on YouTube. These fake YouTubers who are telling you the news from their own perspective and opinion. It's biased. Like watch Sky News, ITV, Channel 4, those things, you know, and talk to your family about what that means, because that can be another thing that kind of gets their worry up. The only thing I was going to say to what Simon said, I'm just gutted I don't have another follower of his family. But then there you go, it's fine. I totally agree with what he said. But I'm just very disappointed I'm lacking a follower. But there you go. I'm not taking it personally, Simon. But I think what Simon said is brilliant, though, as from a parent's perspective. There's no right or wrong, but I really like the way Simon went about it. And I know so many people who don't go on social media, and I think that's actually like a really good step to take, especially giving them the text option of an old block phone would be a great idea. So yeah, but yeah, that's how I deal with it.
Tommy, would you agree that a lot of parents seem to feel quite powerless, perhaps because they struggle to see it from the young person's point of view? They sometimes don't understand the technology themselves. It does seem that a lot of parents perhaps don't have the confidence to be able to do what Simon's done, in my experience. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing is, Simon knows this very, very well. Probably no one better than Simon here tonight. So I think his family, and they've got a really clever, really simple system in that sense, and there's conversation going on. The problem I have is with parents is like, should they go on there? It's like, do you understand the app? Have you looked through this? What the outcomes could be if they were on this app? Do you understand privacy settings? They change all the time. Facebook changes all the time, as we know. But TikTok, I always say, I love using TikTok. What I grew on, but actually YouTube is possibly safer because of what they have on there. Whereas TikTok, you can scroll 1 minute and you're looking at some lovely, cute kittens or like a school meme of a great Norfolk teacher there, but the next minute it's something completely inappropriate and unsafe or untrue or fake news, and it can really spark and the comment section can be vile. But they are getting better at it. But yeah, it's the problem we have now, though, is I've been up and down a few schools now in Norfolk talking about this. So I talk about not being a social media person, like not being like a YouTuber, because that's what they all want to be. These kids nowadays want to be a YouTuber, a content creator, an influencer. And it's like, actually do that as a hobby. Actually have a proper job, do something like being a cleaner, a teacher, a chef or whatever, something like that. That's far more feasible. But then saying to parents that they're going to need these skills as well. So coding is something that's being pushed in lots of schools and colleges as well. Technology, there's lots of businesses that use social media as well. So it's that balance is really difficult. But tracking is a good thing. Tracking apps are really good. I don't know if you guys mentioned that at schools. We track. Sure. We say, how many hours they're on their restriction. Simon mentioned it earlier, which is brilliant. Like I said, Simon's really rehearsed on this role, so he knows what he's doing. But he's like one decent parent, okay? Other parents need to follow suit. But yeah.
And I guess it's also about, okay, we can reduce mobile phone and social media use, but we need to also replace it with things that give us real joy, don't we? So it's about connecting with exercise, it's about connecting with sleep, or whatever it is in your life, because you can't, if you're battling any addiction, you can't just take something away. And I think it is an addiction, by the way. You can't just take something away, you need to replace it with something, and maybe that's something to move on to.
It's funny. I'm now going to bring Chris in, because Tommy raised something a minute ago that I wanted to ask Chris about, and it was about Tommy. You mentioned about you're very good at helping yourself. You know how to do that, but you kind of struggle when it comes to helping others because you can't always control that. Chris, one of the things I wanted to bring in is you raise this is an amazing. You raise so much money for Big C and a few other charities. Do you feel that helps you? Like, I know a lot of the reason I do some of this stuff is because I don't want it. It's kind of selfish in some way that I want to help other people because it makes me feel good knowing that other people feel better. A lot of the charity you raise, obviously, it comes from a place where you've struggled. You've spoken about it a lot. Do you feel the fundraising that you do also helps you as well as helping others?
What I hugely believe in is, and I know that we've slammed social media a lot in this conversation, but I believe that it can be used as a force for good. And I believe there's a lot of people moaning and they're not putting anything good into the room. And so I think whether it be charity fundraising, whether it be being the change that we want to see regarding opening up about our mental health. This is why we're all doing this tonight, right? Let's be the change that we want to see in the world, and try and put some good stuff in to get some good stuff out. So that's my own personal belief system and values. And I raised money for Big C because I lost my mum to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer in 2007. And it's part of probably my grieving process. But yeah, there's probably maybe like a 5 or 10% percentage out of 100 where I am actually doing something good, because I certainly don't have the social media numbers of these guys by any stretch of the imagination. But I believe that if you've built an audience, you want to try and lead by example and try and show people what they should do with an online presence. And then hopefully it gives young people something positive to look up to and to emulate, because it's not all bad, right? You can be a good guy, and you can win by being kind in life. So that's the main reason why I do the charity fundraising. But even then, David, there's always someone. It made me giggle. Well, actually, no, it didn't make me giggle. It actually really got to me. I do this thing every season because I'm a massive Norwich fan. I want to help more young people support Norwich rather than supporting one of those soulless Premier League clubs. So I really like to put my own money into basically paying for kids' Norwich City kits with, I don't know, it might be 4 or 5 or whatever. And then other Norwich fans kind of join the train and they donate their money and it gets bigger and bigger. And someone responded to me like, oh yeah, but you're, the club are giving you the money to do that, and you're just doing it to make yourself look even like, so this is the frustrating thing, and where we're at. And this whole thing is so complicated. Mental health, social media, it can be used as a force for good though, for sure. So but yeah, I'm a huge believer in, like, I love the idea of doing the TikTok lives and having someone on there, just making sure it's a safe space and monitoring it. And I love, for example, Simon does something incredible where Simon is just so vulnerable with such a big presence, with, in my opinion, the biggest presenting job in the country. So like, that's what we should do. We should lead with kindness and show other people that's how you can do social media.
One of the last things I want to say about social media in this section is, and it's a commendation to you about how you deal with people. And I've seen you, and lots of people see you, and lots of people love that you do this. And someone will make a snarky comment to you or say something quite cutting, and you'll respond with complete kindness, with no animosity whatsoever. And you'll offer them a crate of beer, you'll offer them a shirt. And the amount of times I've seen them kind of go, there are some people that then still will be like, frankly, an idiot. But there are some people that genuinely see you do that and go, "Oh, hang on, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that." And fighting that with just pure kindness. That's because that's all it is. You've got to buy them a crate of Lakens, or you could buy them a shirt, or you do something for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a wonderful thing to see. The other thing I wanted to then get onto, and one of the things I really want to bring up today, is support networks. So Chris, when we did ours, you talked about Jack being your support network. I think you called him your accountability buddy. I can't remember the exact terminology, but it was something like that. Obviously, you spend a lot of time with the football. You've got a great group of guys around you that you talk about a lot. In terms of your support network, how important are they when you have a bad day?
Absolutely vital. And that is my grave concern with people and their mental health, is that they, and I feel fortunate that people trust me enough to open up to me on private messages, but it also concerns me the amount of private messages I get from all sorts of people, different ages, different backgrounds, different careers, saying, I don't have anyone to talk to about this. I don't feel comfortable to talk to them about this. I don't have the friends. I'm concerned they'll take the mickey out of me for it. So having a support network is absolutely vital. And it's no different to having a business mentor or a career mentor. Or in actual fact, the other night, I'll big up Simon whilst I'm with him. I've been put into the canary call BBC frying pan this season, right? And that goes up another level in terms of the amount of exposure and potential abuse that comes off the back of it, and criticism. And I didn't even need to. I didn't even need to message Simon. Simon called. He's walking out of Sky Sports and he calls me up and he goes, "Chris, you did a brilliant job today. I've just started to listen to it." Da, 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 da. Like that's having someone on your team, and I think I would just really plead to anyone that's listening and watching this now is like try and find your tribe that you can trust with anything and open up to them. And quite frankly, if someone is taking the mickey out of you or they make you feel bad for opening up to them, they are not in your tribe. And I think it's vital, David. I'm so fortunate enough to, I still have bad days. I'm getting like, like these guys, dare I say now, where I'm becoming slightly older and slightly more weathered, and I feel sad about the fact that I'm used to it, but it still does get to me. Of course, it does, right? And then I'll then have a word with my wife, and she'll say, "Hang on a minute, Chris. Hang on a minute. All those people watch it and tune into it and value it and like it." And the other thing I obviously being in the world of social is that you only ever hear from two different types of people regarding feedback or criticism. So you either get really good feedback or really bad, but there's a bunch of people in the middle that don't say anything, but they just continue to turn up. Sorry to make it about social again, but back into support networks, David, is vital. You need to find your tribe, and you can start that by opening up to different people. It doesn't need to even be someone that you're particularly close with. It could just be someone that you see online that you quite like the way they're putting themselves about, the way that they're communicating, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So I'm the reason I bring support networks in is I'm very open. I tried to end my life in 2013, and I didn't feel like I had a support network. And then when I started telling people about this, everyone was angry at me because it was like, why didn't you talk to me? Um, and I'm now more open about this, but I have my wife I can talk to. But there's an interesting thing you said that it doesn't have to be someone you know. Obviously, there's lots of resources out there, Samaritans, Papyrus, Mind. But the guy that with Nick started the mental health arm of Canaries Trust, Chris Guns, I've never met him, but we still text once a week just to make sure each other's all right. But so we'll have the Canaries Trust guys that I talk to. I've got my friends in Birmingham where I live that I talk to. I've got my family, and then I've got people I've never met that I just keep in touch with me, make sure I'm all right. But I've now got my son as well. And although I obviously can't talk to him in the same way, having that person that I can just have fun with and just almost talk to myself with him. He's obviously too young to understand any of this, but he always puts a smile on my, apart from when he's screaming at 2 o'clock in the morning. But he usually puts a smile on my face. And Simon, you were very open, obviously, with what happened to your wife, and you're so like your son was your support network. And I remember you talking about this, like you wanted to be with him because he was who you wanted to be around as well. And I know you probably had others, but it was him that you were so focused on, and it was so lovely to see in such a horrible time.
Hmm. Yeah, no, he was. That's fine. Yeah, we were like a little team for 18 months or so before I sort of met Darina and she started coming into my life. But yeah, we were we lent on each other. But he was only 8 at the time. I did have some amazing friends around me during that time and some amazing supporters. And I had a guy he's been a mentor to me down the years called Phil, and he is someone. What I've found in terms of support networks have been really important for me. I totally. It rings true what Chris was saying about finding your tribe. It's about finding people as well who can love and support you without judgment, that you can say anything to them and that they're going to listen. They're not going to leap in straight away and say, why have you done that? I mean, one area that I've had to be less so now because I'm absolutely fine, but I had some really pronounced, along with everything else, after the events of 2017 when my first wife died very suddenly. I had a long battle with alcohol, and that being my kind of go-to thing in terms of not wanting to deal with the pain of what had happened and numbing it and, not sitting in the pain, which is what you need to do when you face something massive in life. At some point, you've got to confront the pain. I didn't want to. And as I embarked down this long road of recovery. Alcohol never really went away. And this mate Phil of mine was just absolutely brilliant at the way he supported me. I gave him permission to ask the difficult questions. You know, if you've got someone that you lean on, a good friend of yours, whoever it might be, when it comes to supporting you with your mental health, you essentially need to give them permission to ask the difficult questions. You're inviting them into your own space to say, how are you doing this week? And I was accountable to someone else, another friend of mine. And just to explain why with one person it didn't work and why with Phil it did work, is because when it came to the whole area of drinking and trying to support me through coming out the other side of what I was battling with then, my one friend who I'd given that permission to ask the tough questions, he was always like, what's going on with the drinking? And straight away, in terms of the words he used and the tone in his voice, I felt kind of condemned. I felt judged. I felt not good enough. I felt I can't open up to this guy because I just feel like he's judging me already, and there's not a feeling of love coming from him. Whereas my mate Phil, he was very, very straightforward. He just go, all right, bud, you know, what's going on with the drink at the moment? How you doing? And that how you doing was really important, because actually it was saying I'm as interested in you as I am with what's going on with the alcohol at the moment. And so that is so important when it comes to supporting each other and having people in your lives who will support you through mental health struggles, grief, whatever it might be, is when you invite them into that space, there has to be a complete and utter absence of judgment. If there is a sense that you are being judged, that relationship will not work. But similarly, from your point of view, you have to be big enough to go, look, I have given you permission to ask the difficult questions in order to support me. So when those difficult questions come, rather than getting on the front foot or very defensive, whatever it might be, just being able to sit in the fact that you're going to be asked questions that, yeah, on one particular day, you don't feel like you want to answer. But I tell you what, for me, over the course of the last few years in particular, as I came through 2017, yeah, Ethan was a massive support, but in terms of that support from people who knew what they were talking about and could ask the difficult questions and could spot when I was struggling in a way an 8-year-old boy can't, they were gold dust.
You've said something really kind of, I really want to pick you up on fantastically, is it's the tone. Because the same thing can be said by different people and have an entirely different connotation as to how you take it and how it comes across. And I'm going to again pick on Tommy for this one, because I was watching one of Tommy's lives earlier, and I watch them like kind of when I'm in the kitchen cooking between 5 and 6. If you're doing one, I might catch a little bit of it. One of the things that I think you're very good at, and one of the things I want to ask you, whether it's intentional or just it's just how you are, is how you talk to the people that are on your live. Because you watch some people do lives and they're there to be a name, they're there to they pick up on stuff that thing says, and they're quite abrupt and strong, whereas you're quite soft, you're quite relaxed about what, like when people talk, you have a bit of fun with them. Is that part of you as a person, or do you have to try to do that?
I think that's a bit of both, really. I think I'm there to protect myself, because I think if I show on a live when someone said something to me or something that is trying to get provoking me, weakness of me going, oh, that actually hurt, they've got me. And I know it sounds really bad to say things like that, you know, what we're talking about now, but I've got to get that right straight away. So no, but also, to be honest, and with my fellow teacher here, that's something teachers are really good at. Like, come on, like he's got to speak up about this, because we can take it with what students say to me when I walk in, and my students, what they talk about, what I'm wearing, what cologne. I mean, I can take it. So I'm like, it's that tone of voice you have to use. Especially in SEN, you have to, you know, some of my autistic students, they can just be very blunt. So it's like, oh, okay. And if you actually go on a personal attack back at them with your tone, it's going to be all kinds of wrong. But I think Chris would also probably agree that he has to, when he's live on Radio Norfolk, having so many people, you know, have their opinion about Norwich, and maybe that gets a bit personal sometimes as well. I hear, you know, we've always got Barry from, like, you know, Norwich, who's never seen the game, but he sort of seems to know everything about the game. But yeah, it just always makes me chuckle. But yeah, it's about letting them. I'm always quite jovial. I don't want to let them know it's affected me, because if I do that, I think it could go deeper. But yeah, that's how I deal with it.
It's about trust as well, isn't it? I mean, the tone is important, but the tone also comes from a place of trust. And we know that in the classroom, don't we, that young people will open up to an adult they trust. But also, if you know that a friend is going to be there, you will take that difficult question. David, I was going to ask you, as you've done so much work in this area, through the Canaries Trust Mental Health, there's been so much talked about getting men to open up. How much progress do you think has actually been made there?
It sort of depends on the time frame you're looking at. I think long term, a lot. Like if you look at the last 10
I agree.
years, so if we take sort of when I had my issues in 2013, no one spoke. There was nothing about this. I was 20, can't work out how old I was now. I was something like 27. No, I was 26, and I remember I'd go to the pub with my mates, and I don't drink, I'm teetotal, but I'd go to the pub with them, and I'd sit and listen to them, and all they'd talk about things that weren't, I won't say weren't important, because of what, like, you don't want every day to be a hard day, but each of us were going through stuff at various points, and no one would talk about it. And it was like it was almost people were ashamed. And you look now, and you look at how many people on social media, and Chris mentioned about being a force for good. So many people on social media, right? Let's get men to talk. There are so many specific charities about it. So in 10 years alone, which is the time frame I can talk about, so much has happened. So much has been brought forward about getting men to open up. Over a small period of time, if we look at the last 2 years, I think progress sometimes stagnates, because people are like, oh well, men are talking, but actually, are men talking as an individual? Am I going to my friends and saying, you know what, I've got a problem today? So over a long period of time, I think we have made a huge amount of progress, and people are willing to open up, and more importantly, people are willing to be receptive of it, because that's the trick. Is not just opening up; it's actually having people on the other end who are going, yeah, okay, talk to me. Because it's all very well and good opening up, and then someone going, now go away, I'm not interested, or you're weak, or whatever. So actually, I think a lot of progress has been made. Now, I wanted to ask you. I know you want to take a back seat on this, but I did want to ask you a question on what someone else had said. I think it was Simon that said it about taking a step back. Because one of the things I admire about the way you handle things is you do just kind of take yourself out of the situation rather than get involved. Like Chris has a great way of going, no, I'm going to reply with kindness. Whereas I've seen you go, no, I'm going to take myself off social media for a couple of days. I'm on holiday or whatever it is. And how easy do you find that? Not just social media. I'm literally talking completely in from everything, taking a step back and just looking after yourself.
I think you have to. I mean, I think modern life is just absolutely relentless, and I think we've talked a lot about the issues of social media. But another problem that it creates is the feeling that we've always got to be contactable. That's a massive thing. I think WhatsApp particularly. You feel that you should always be there. So I would say that having a break from things is absolutely crucial. And I think if people don't already, I would definitely encourage them just to think of where they can just do that. I think it helps you to refocus. I think it helps with freshness, and I think sometimes in terms of conflict, I think and the guys that have the massive social media followings will know this, and we've talked about it already, but you cannot change everything. You've just got to be consistent, and you've got to pick your battles. And it's also sometimes the same with young people. We feel that we've got to respond immediately and we've got to solve everything. Actually, sometimes we can't solve everything. We've just got to be there, and we've got to be compassionate. So I definitely think taking a break from things is really positive, and would advise it to anyone.
And one of the things we all suffer from the affliction is this thing where we have to work. And I bring this up because I love my job. I absolutely adore what I do. I really get a lot of joy out of it, but that makes it for me very difficult to switch off. I am
Yeah.
one of the people that's guilty of having the communication apps for my work on my phone. And if I get a message at 9 o'clock and it's a quick, oh, it's a quick, I'll just deal with it. I'm really, really bad at switching off. Um, Chris, Simon, and Tommy, I want to add like all three of you on this one, because you've all got very different roles, and yet somehow they come together very well. So, Simon, you're obviously a sports presenter. That can be, I mean, you've presented games at night where you haven't been finishing until 10 o'clock. Chris, you are a social media specialist. I think your LinkedIn bio says. And obviously, social media is a 24/7 thing for a lot of companies. And Tommy, as a SEN teacher, and then coming straight onto TikTok, which is your hobby, but a very prevalent hobby, how easy do you guys find it to switch off at the end of the day? Are you able to? Do you have the days when no, I'm happy to do a bit of work, or I need to switch off because I need to stop. How? I mean, Chris, we'll start with you as I said your name first. Are you able to switch off from your role, and how easy is it if you are?
Yeah, no, it's tough to switch off. I'm in a bit of a unique situation where my hobby became part of how I earn a living. So that's kind of quite unique. I'd also just kind of like to positively challenge, if you don't mind, David, and actually just say it's okay, and let's not get ourselves in that negative spiral of overthinking the fact that we're not turning off, because actually, if a massive part of mental health for me, which so many people are lacking in their lives for no fault of their own, is community. And that's what you can get by being connected, by being on, by talking to people. Again, we've spoken about this now about, talking and opening up, and that does that. So I think we need to be a bit careful in terms of, potentially villainizing not being able to switch off, because actually, if it makes your mental health feel good by being on and you love what you do, then you don't have to stop what you do because it's worked for someone else. Because what works for someone won't work for someone else. So, but I totally recognize the fact that I do work too much. I do find it difficult to switch off. As you said, I specialize in social media. I run a social media agency, right? So, but people always find it remarkable. I have all my notifications turned off because I'm just on them anyway, just on them, right? So I think you have to just try and set some rules, some behaviors, some habits, but I don't stick to them. I find it incredibly difficult. But then on the flip side is I love what I do. I love helping people. And so it gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense of community. And then in turn, it helps my mental health. So that's how I would respond to that, David.
No, and I think it's a very good point actually. Like I started that conversation by going, I love what I do and I do it because I enjoy it, and then I should switch off. It's like actually, I do get a sense of accomplishment if I get a message saying, "Oh, this needs fixing," and it's a 5 minute fix, and I do it. I get a sense of accomplishment, which helps my mental well being. Simon, you spoke about it earlier. It's like when you finish off a Saturday, you 24 hours without social media, and again, not to villainize social media all the time, and not to talk about it, but in terms of other stuff, how do you feel you need to switch off occasionally, or are you quite happy answering the phone for, I assume you have an agent, I have no idea, I'm not in that space. So are you quite happy answering those at any time, or do you prefer to have your own downtime?
If my agent was ringing on a Saturday night, I'd be very worried because it probably wouldn't be a good sign. No, I find it a real battle with the job I do. And it was one of the things I really struggled with mentally as I was going through the process last summer of applying for the job. So I was asked if I wanted to apply for Soccer Saturday. And as someone who'd watched it many, many times, I'd seen Jeff doing it in the flesh when I was in at Sky. So I knew what it took. I knew it was incredibly complicated, busy, long show. And for someone who probably for around about 7 years now has on and off struggled with anxiety, this just seemed to be a marriage made in hell. Taking on this bonkers show as someone who struggles with anxiety. So I'd say the last season, the first season I did, was a real learning curve in terms of getting the balance right. And a lot of the time I didn't get it right between having family time, having my own time, which is really, really important, and making sure that I would go in every Saturday as prepared as I possibly could be. And it was a really hard balance to get because you'd get home on a Saturday night absolutely exhausted. We found out after 2 failed attempts that date nights on a Saturday after Soccer Saturday were a disaster zone. I remember Dorina saying to me, and I think the second one we went on, "You've got no chat." And I just said, "I've been literally chatting for 6 hours. Let's not do Saturday nights again." But I could kind of switch off, and then literally 2 hours after you're getting home, you're thinking, obviously I want to watch it, but I need to watch Match of the Day to see what the pundits have made, because you have to remember with Soccer Saturday, you are covering around about 65 to 70 games every single Saturday. So although the guys in the studio are watching their own game from the Premier League by and large, I cannot just fixate on one game. I'm flicking around everywhere. I'm shouting out what's just happened to Bonnyrigg Rose in the lower Scottish leagues. You're everywhere. So actually, it's quite nice to sit down and watch them. But straight away, you're kind of going back into work mode. And I have to be really disciplined. I mean, this is both as a Christian, so I believe in, as far as I can, keeping Sundays free from work. But I will sometimes, without thinking about it, last season, I'd be sat downstairs because we've got two youngsters now, and you've got up quite early, and I'm already tapping in the fixtures for next Saturday, and I'd be like literally having a word of myself saying, it's 7:30 on a Sunday. You've got another 5.5 days, well, nearly 6 whole days till the next soccer Saturday. You do not need to do this. So it's a real kind of discipline over the last, really, that whole first season of saying it's going to be really important for me, both from a mental point of view, but also from a physical point of view, from a family point of view, from a work point of view, to somehow strike the balance, because otherwise I will become all consumed by this show. Because you guys will know we live in the 24/7 news cycle now, and when it comes to football, there is just so much comment and opinion and amazing things being written, some less than amazing things being written as well. There are podcasts everywhere you look. There's an absolute smorgasbord, an endless smorgasbord of information. I had to kind of teach myself where the cutoff point came. I don't need to know that, because there were times last season when I never switched off. My mind was always going through the first 3 hours. What questions am I going to ask Merson this week? How am I going to do a better job of covering League Two this week? Because I didn't cover it particularly well last week, and I kind of messed up the National League, and I need to be more across what's happening, with the National League, and Chesterfield are flying. I need to keep an eye on their record. It was driving me to distraction, but it was also firing off the anxiety, and it was also creating a real sense of fatigue. So I was going into every Saturday not in the best shape. Where I'm at now, and I think that was part of the learning curve that was always going to happen, it was kind of inescapable, is now I've got a very good routine where I'm much more disciplined about saying, right, Sunday, I don't need to do anything. Saturday, if I fall asleep halfway through match of the day, like I have done for the last 10 years, it doesn't matter. I can watch a bit in the morning, or I can watch it Monday. And actually, when I get to 5 o'clock each day, or whenever it is, I'm going to make sure that I still do my circuits class. I'm still around for the kids in the evening, that I can help Doreen with bath time. Because if I don't, then mentally I end up frazzled. And then I cannot do my job on a Saturday that demands me to be mentally sharp, physically on form in terms of feeling at least a little bit fresh, because it's just a bonkers show. So it's been a real learning curve, David. But for me, it's really important when you're going for pretty much 10 months solid. You've got the occasional international weekend off like this weekend, but pretty much every weekend, and then Christmas and Easter very busy. If I do not switch off, I crash and burn.
I'm going to come to you in a second, Tommy, because I want to. There's a specific thing I want to ask you, but it's interesting. You brought up there. Obviously, you say you're a Christian. What I mean by that is you're open about that. You talk about that quite a lot. I'm agnostic, but my nan was incredibly religious. And I actually have a belief that faith and religion has its place as long as that's what you believe in. And the reason I bring this up is triple jumper Jonathan Edwards. I think this is a
Yes.
wonderful story. Um, world record holder for one of the longest world records that exists in athletics. He refused to jump on a Sunday because that was his day of rest. And he said it ruined a lot of time that I had, and it ruined a lot of flow that I had. And there were competitions, and there was one world championship he couldn't compete at because it was on a Sunday, and he refused. And that was always his day off. And we're talking about one of the best athletes in the world at his sport. And he's like, no, I'm having that break. Don't care, because a lot of people will be like, no, I have to keep it up because I'm the best. I've got to keep going. If I don't, I won't. And he was like, no, I'm not doing it. And he said it was because I'm my faith says Sunday should be a day of rest. So that's what I'm keeping it as. And I always found that really interesting that even with that, even with his decision, he was still as good as he was because that was what he wanted to do, and it made him happy. So, and Tommy, I'm going to come to you on the subject of work because a lot of my family are teachers, and there is the age old joke, and I use that in massive quotes, that teachers finish at 3:30 and then have the day off. I absolutely know that's not true, because you have lesson planning, you have marking that falls outside of the school hours. You obviously have your social media hobby, and your job that you do as well as that. So how easy is it for you to step away knowing that other children are relying on you to set that lesson planning? And Nick, you'll know this as well from your point of view. It's like, how easy is it to step back and just go, I need a break?
I get told off by my family. So I was on the beach in like Turkey this summer with my Norwich towel. Just thought I'd get that in there. And
Well played.
yeah, thank you,
Really
thank
well
you.
played.
So I didn't put my top on tonight. Chris is showing me up now, right? So anyway, I was on the beach and my boss messaged me, and we have a really good rapport with me and my boss. She's also a Norwich fan. Big shout out to her. And she said, I need to speak to you. I've got something I want to run by you. And no, she didn't ask me to reply back or anything, but I did, because I really do love my job as a teacher. And I know that if I say something now, if I say, go on then, yeah, I want to sort this out, then I can relax. So I can't switch off very well from things like that. And nor do I want to. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Because I just know it will have a big consequence if I don't get it sorted over in the summer. Then I know in September I get the ball rolling, and then I think it's about like that preparation as teachers. I know we get all that time off. Everyone makes that joke about how much time we got off in the summer. Granted, but we are actually preparing lessons all the time. We're always thinking, we're not stopping. We're like, for me in my SEN community as a teacher, we're thinking about all the profiles of the students that are coming. So I have like 16 students who are going to be all together at one point in a P lesson. I've got to think about all the differentiations I've got to do. So no, I don't switch off, and that's probably a very bad habit, and I don't recommend that to any new teacher out there. You should create those boundaries. And I just want to say one thing: like, if you asked me 4 years ago, how do I balance social media and my family? Obviously, Simon's mentioned that, and Chris mentioned that really well, and all of you have, sorry. And my job, I messed it up big time. I got it really badly wrong, guys. I'd have probably been quite tearful talking about it, because I feel like I lost time with my kids. And yeah, I don't know why I thought it's like a good thing to do at the time, but I thought I was helping people during lockdown by doing the sketches. But like, I sometimes go back and think, did I miss moments with my kids? And I know I didn't, because I get told by my support family that I did a good job. But I just sometimes I get so hit up on that, and I'm sorry to do that. But yeah, so but now now I've got it like perfect, because I've got my support network. I don't have Simon and Chris's number to call me. I'm going to try and get that one day at the end of a lesson. But I have my free, and I'm going to mention them. Their name is, it's called Jam. It's Jamie, Adam, and Matt. They're my boys. They're my WhatsApp boys, and they're the ones who got me into all this. But they're also the ones I can just talk to freely, like I have just with you guys, and say, you're doing a good job. You're doing a great job at school. I loved what you did on social media recently. Like, I put something out there the week I've never done before about my GCSE results. They were shocking. Chris talks about like doing good things on social media, and I felt like it's the first time I put myself out there, like who I actually was from what I got, and they weren't great. But I wanted everyone to know that a piece of paper doesn't define you, you know. But like, I then did a self-help video for year sevens. That took me 4 hours to make. I need to work on my social media. I'll talk to Chris at the end of it how he does it. But it takes time. But like, I get upset because I've never talked about this ever. But I do think about the time back that I might have missed my kids so much because I was doing the social media. And now I've got such a good balance. But like, even when I went on holiday, I knew that I wasn't teaching, but I was still doing emails, and at the same time I was actually creating content. But I had to create content. I had a rule when my kids were doing downtime, so if they're reading their books or they're putting the after sun on or they're just chilling, I would quickly go and film a TikTok. I can film them so quickly now, but back in the day they used to take me so long because I'm not media savvy. And I am a little better now, obviously, but that's my biggest regret I've ever had as a dad, and
Tommy,
I can't get that back.
how old are your kids?
My son Jack is 5 and my daughter Liberty is 9.
9. I listen, mate. First of all, don't ever apologise for getting emotional. Listen, if you can't be emotional in this space, you can't be emotional anywhere. But I'd say I think it's amazing what you've just said, and you know, I've read so many stories over the years and seen it written about in newspapers when it comes to people and what they say when they're about to breathe their last. And a lot of it is regret about never getting the balance right between our working lives and our family lives, and to have the self-awareness that you do at your age when your kids are still that stage is amazing, because so many parents get to the end and they look back and think, do you know what, I didn't get the balance right. I did spend too much time just focusing on work but never focusing on them. So mate, I know I can understand the regret, but you are present for them now. You're aware of this way before, sadly, too many parents become aware that actually they didn't spend enough time or weren't present enough for you. So mate, you really shouldn't regret it, and they're a great age to be present with as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Simon's absolutely right, and I want to pick up on something that Chris said earlier. It's like there is the balance. You want to spend time with your kids. You enjoy your job, but not switching off from your job shouldn't be vilified, as long as you've got that balance, as long as the balance you've got, you're happy with. And certainly now, Tommy, and thank you so much for opening up, and like I hope I haven't upset you by bringing this up to you. But
No.
I think you're happy with your balance, and that's what matters the most.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely fantastic. And I'm conscious we're coming up on the hour, and I wanted this to be about an hour. So I want to kind of take this now to kind of, from each of you, get some advice for someone you know, or someone that may be listening who is either struggling or knows someone that's struggling. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. What advice can you give, either to do with social media, because that's obviously a big part of what we do nowadays, or outside of that, just to watch out for the signs for in yourself or in others?
Sorry, David, I actually don't understand the question. What do you mean?
So in terms of people watching this who might be struggling, or people watching this who might see someone that's struggling, what advice would you offer them?
Well, there's so much, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think you should learn about self-psychology, and you should think about that thinking cycle that I've spoken about already. And I think you should start to create a tribe of people that don't judge you, that you feel comfortable with opening up to, like TT's jam. I quite like that. That's quite good. And I think like, I know it's fluffy, but be the change you want to see. Like, come on, let's do something, right? I think there's a lot of talk about talking. I'm pleased that Nick brought up his point about, what's the progress, David. I think my conclusion to this is, and I wanted to come on with an agenda to say, like, we've ticked, like, Pete, come on, we know we need to talk. Let's now give each other the toolkit to talk. Let's talk about questions. Let's talk about tone. And let's take it to the next level. And just a personal message to anyone that's watching and listening, please feel free to use me. Message me absolutely any time and I'll get back to you. Don't get me wrong, it might not be straight away, but I will get back to you. And we can have a chat. You're never alone. And keep going. You're doing better than you think you are, which I think is a nice message that's also been said in this conversation.
Oh, 100%. And I think whoever's watching this that might be struggling, is the fact that you are here says that you are doing well, because there are so many people that unfortunately don't feel that way. Simon, what about yourself? What advice could you give? What advice do you feel most prevalent to people that may be watching?
So my advice would be something that I tend to say a lot when I do talks on this particular area, and it's often aimed mainly at men, but it isn't just men, but it tends to be a bit of a male problem. This, when we are struggling in life with whatever it might be, if it is relationship issues, whether it's worries about our future in terms of our job, whether it's grief or it's mental health problems, we need to express how we're feeling. We need to let those feelings out, because if you don't, you are essentially like, this is a water bottle, by the way, but pretend it's a fizzy bottle of drink. You're like a fizzy bottle of drink that just, these emotions, these feelings, they just get shaken around, but they've got nowhere to go. And eventually, in whatever shape that will take, they will just explode out, and it will be even more messy than it probably already is. One of the challenges I say to people often, particularly guys, and I'd say to people struggling now, because it's a really hard thing to do, and Chris mentioned it very kindly earlier, one of the things I'm very open and honest about are my struggles with anxiety in the online space. And I sometimes get messages from people going, why do you bang on about this? Why do you say this? Just do, you're great at what you do. Yeah, but this is part of who I am as well at the moment. And I struggle with anxiety, and sometimes it makes working really hard. And I talk about it because I know that every time I do, I get so many messages from people saying, thank you that you are brave enough to talk about this, because this is exactly how I feel. I just right now cannot even begin to articulate how I'm feeling. And so there is, for me, a real powerhouse in being vulnerable. It's not a very male thing to do, but actually we've got to change the narrative and flip it on the head, because for too long, particularly in our nation, particularly amongst men, vulnerability has been seen as a sign of weakness, but actually it's a sign of strength. So I'd say to you, particularly guys watching this, if you are struggling now with whatever it might be, find that tribe that Chris has talked about, find those people you trust and you can be open with, and be open. Just say, this is me right now. This is who I am. This is what I'm struggling with, rather than just clenching the fist, holding it all in, and then ending up in an even worse place further down the line. It's about unclenching the fist and saying, right now, I'm struggling. Right now, I need you to hear me. Right now, I'm giving you the permission to ask those questions. It won't sort everything out overnight. It really won't. But it's the beginning of the journey to a better place. But there has to be some vulnerability at the start.
I just want to talk about myself for 2 seconds. So by the time this goes out, World Mental Health Day, we'll have already had Prevention of Suicide Day. I'm very open that I'm a suicide survivor, but I don't go into detail because it's mostly upsetting for me, because it's a time that I regret. I know I shouldn't. I know because, I was feeling low. But I saw something from a friend of mine the other day, who felt who was quite open about the fact that he was struggling, but he then felt ashamed, and he then felt he was alone in being ashamed because I was so open about it. But actually, I don't really talk about the details. So I've written a blog, and it will have gone out by the time this video goes out, actually detailing that I don't know why I felt the way I did. I can't tell you what drove me to that point, and yet I still felt that way, and I felt ashamed, and I don't now. So the idea of, I'm trying to be more open because I've seen someone who is struggling with that, and I'm like, I don't lose anything by being more open. I probably gain things from it. So that's a good point. Nick, I'm going to ask you. Obviously, you and I tweet regularly, or post regularly. Sorry, I apologise for the wrong name. But for this particular call, in terms of advice, what would you offer?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say that I completely agree with Chris that I think we need to demand more. I think we've said for so long, just talk. Yeah, but actually, what does that mean? And how can we develop the literacy and the words to actually make that a bit more meaningful? In terms of what I'd offer to answer the question, I think it is to find something that sparks joy within you. And I think one thing that I've really reflected on listening to everyone speak is the passion for people's jobs, what they love to do, whether it is being involved in social media, whether it's being involved with football, whether it's being involved with teaching. Everyone has talked with great passion. And in my experience of working with young people going through issues, they often have issues where there's nothing in their life. They can't say, and it's extremely sad, they can't say anything that they enjoy, and they can't talk about any hobbies. So find something that you love doing, even if other people laugh at you for it, even if it's something that can seem really silly, and just enjoy doing it, and find other people that feel the same.
I'm open about this. People joke about this with me, but in a friendly way. My hobby is flags. I love flags. I love the geography of things. Obviously, people always come back to the Big Bang Theory and joke about it, but I know my friends are friendly with their joking. And actually, I've got to a point now where I just enjoy that sort of stuff. And if someone wants to rib me about it, kind of don't care, if I'm honest, anymore, in a positive sense. So, and Tommy, on to yourself. Advice you can offer today for someone that might be watching.
Yeah, so I'm going to sort of target the younger audience, obviously my conglomerate, really. So I think you guys might have heard of course you've heard of this, is Kooth. It's a really good online thing, that a platform that you can go to. It's a very safe platform that you can go to. So it's aimed at people like 11 to 18-year-olds that you can kind of get support from. It's done by like the NHS and the Wellbeing, but it's had so many referrals in Norfolk. I haven't got the statistics with me today. I'm not going to be super teacher-like, but it's a really safe platform to use. It's free and safe to use. So, but my thing to add, I think, to what you guys are saying about what can we do more, it's like how to actively listen is quite a big thing to do as well. So it's, when I had a friend once, he came to me and said how he was going through some mental health struggles, and it really shocked me for the first time. But when he said that, I was also mindful about how I was looking, how I was reacting to him. I didn't interview him. I just listened, didn't say a word. And if you know me well enough and you see my live channel, I chat for England. So I didn't say a word, and I just listened to him really carefully. So just listen the best way you possibly can. And if at the end they want advice and you feel like you can safely give it, go for it. But if they just want to actually get it out for the first time, you might be the first person they ever disclose something like that to. So, it's quite a big thing. So if they're doing that to you for the first time, you should feel almost proud that you're that good of a friend that they'd want to, but just listen really carefully and then talk it through them slowly. Like what kind of you plan to do. I think Simon said earlier, like the friend that, the tone as well. You guys all mentioned the tone, but Simon said, how you go about saying that to them afterwards, like, oh, how are you going with your mental health? You wouldn't say it like that. You'd be like, how's things been at work? How's things been going lately? Since we last chatted, is everything all good? And that's what I did with my friend, and it seemed to work really well. So Kooth is a really good thing for the younger audience if they're watching to use, and just listen better if you can. Yeah.
So just on the Kooth thing, Nick's just mentioned to me what it is. It's Kooth.com, and it's KOOTH. So if someone's interested in what Tommy said, check it out. It's not something I'm aware of, but I'll look into it because of knowing this sort of stuff. Chris has said it before, it goes without saying from me, and I know Nick feels the same. So if anyone watching this has any problems, wants to chat, wants to open up, do it to Chris, myself, to my personal account, to the Canaries Trust mental health account. We aren't experts in this space, but we're always there to listen. And if you need further help, we will gladly point you in the direction of people that are qualified in this. So there is always someone. And if you don't want to talk to us, for whatever reason that may be, there'll be a bunch of phone numbers and addresses at the end of this video that you can look at. So thank you, everyone who's watched this. Guys who have joined me, Simon, Chris, Tommy, Nick, thank you so much for everything you've said today, for joining, for taking time out on a Friday evening to talk about this sort of stuff. We as we've said during the video, we talk about this a lot. Fantastic, but there's still more to do, and there always will be. So guys, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for everyone watching, and please talk if you need.